All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for our live Google Hangout. I'm Susanna Snyder, an education reporter at U.S. News & World Report. And today we're discussing a topic that is crucial to any incoming college student, and that's how to decode your financial aid award letter. So we have two wonderful guests with us today who can weigh in on understanding the components of your letter, comparing awards across different schools, and avoiding any common pitfalls. So our first participant is Katharine Ruby. She's the Director of College Finance at College Coach. And we also have Brad Barnett. He is Senior Associate Director of the Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships at James Madison University. So let's get started. I am going to direct this first question to you, Kathy. And it is, what are the basic components of a financial aid award letter that families should be looking for?
Okay, well, hi, Susanna. Well, the components of a financial aid award that a family should be keeping an eye on are, essentially there are three different components. The first one is grants and scholarships. Those are the best money, of course. Those are the free money that's available to help reduce the cost of tuition and room and board. So when you're looking at grants and scholarships, you're going to want to know where they're from and why they were awarded. The next component is work-study. So that is essentially the ability for a student to work on campus and earn money to contribute toward their costs. And the work-study award that appears on an award letter actually represents the most that a student can earn in that year. It doesn't guarantee they're going to have it. They still have to earn it, but it represents the cap on what they can earn. And then the last component are loans, of course. And when you're looking at a loan on an award letter, you'll want to know whether it's from the student or for the parent. And you'll also want to understand the terms of the loan and whether it's interest-free while the student's in school or whether interest will be accruing and when repayment begins and all kinds of different things, terms to know about the loan. So grants and scholarships, work-study, and loans. Ideally, those are the components of an award.
Wonderful. That's really helpful. So I guess to kind of go off of that question to you, Brad, what's one important phrase that's commonly used on an award letter that families should know and understand?
Sure, Susanna. So there are actually several. We'll try to boil it down to a couple because unfortunately award letters can be a little confusing when you first look at them. We always suggest people, and this seems really basic, is just read the letter before you start asking questions because most of the time it's explained in there. But there are a couple of terminologies we see people get confused about a lot. The first one is the cost of attendance. You'll see this displayed on a lot of financial aid award letters, and for some reason people think it's the bill. We try to do a good job in our aid offices explaining the cost of attendance is not the bill. It's an estimated figure on what we think it will cost the student to attend our school for this particular enrollment period. It usually includes things like estimated tuition and fees, room and board, and then other costs that are really more discretionary, how much the student spends on books or travel expenses or personal care expenses. So there's a lot of estimated living expenses built into that. So be careful and don't assume that that's the bill. The second one to really mention is this idea of a family contribution. Many schools now are using the federal shopping sheet, which is kind of an award notice template, and it has some language that's hard-coded in it, and one of those terminology pieces is called family contribution. And we're seeing a lot of people who think that also is a bill, and that's how much the parents think they have to pay, and the reality is it's not. What it's doing is telling the parents that this is how much they could look to contribute to that overall cost, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's their bill. So I would really read through and hone in on those two things because we see a lot of misunderstanding on those two pieces of terminology.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to direct this next question to Kathy, and I think it should again build off of what Brad was saying. And then Brad, if you want to add anything to the end, please chime in. What else might be misleading or confusing to families on the award letter?
Yeah, I think what Brad has said about that cost of attendance and expected family contribution, those two terms can really be confusing to families. And so I think what's important is to figure out your own net price, to really be looking at what will it actually cost me to send my child to that college. There's the college's estimate, but what's the real cost going to be? Another thing that can be misleading or confusing to families is that some colleges will actually package parent financing into the financial aid award. So you'll open that award and it'll look like the entire cost of attendance is covered. But when you look more closely, you see that it's actually parent financing. Sometimes it'll be called parent financing, sometimes it'll be called a federal direct plus loan. So that can be kind of confusing. You really have to boil it down to what is it going to cost me to send my child to this college, and then what is the true discount? What are the grants and scholarships that can be subtracted to arrive at an actual net price? Because loans and work study, while they certainly help you pay for college, they don't change what you're going to pay, they just change when you're going to pay it. So you really want to be focusing in on that net price.
That's great advice. So understanding that kind of difference between net price and the cost. So Brad, was there anything else that we didn't go over there, or another important thing just that is commonly misunderstood or important to understand?
Suzanne, I think Kathy is spot on with this. Is you really need to pay attention to your own net price. And we often tell people when you look at the award notice and when you try to figure out what it's going to cost you, is hone in on the billable items. And you can find that in the cost of attendance. Is what do I absolutely have to pay? Then what's the free money that I'm getting? And then the difference is really where my net price comes into play on what am I going to have to come up with to pay the difference. And as you look at these award letters, just to be kind of careful, because it's really challenging to make an apples to apples comparison sometimes with the award letters, because they'll look very different. Some schools will package loans up front, some schools won't package loans up front. Some of the terminology is a little different, so be very careful in how you look at it, hone in on the billable costs, and by all means, please do not just take out loan money if a school offers it. You really want to make sure that that's the right thing to do. We're always encouraging people to keep that loan debt down as much as they possibly can and avoid it if they can altogether.
Great. Yeah, and so actually you segued into my next question, which is when these letters might look so different between different schools, is there a way to make an apples to apples comparison between them? What things sort of stay the same and what changes, and how do you go about doing that?
Sure. It's really hard sometimes to do an apples to apples. We're seeing more schools go towards this federal shopping sheet kind of a template, but even within that, there's still some discretion afterwards to add school-specific information to hopefully clean up some of the language on the template that really isn't extremely user-friendly. And even within the template, there's different types of aid that's packaged. You'll see some schools may not offer their scholarship dollars as part of their initial financial aid package. Maybe they come from a different part of the school, from a different notification process. It's not even on the original financial aid offer. That's another common thing that we see at schools. So they may get more than one notice from a school if they're a scholarship candidate. So apples to apples is really hard, which is why it's so important just to really make sure that you read what the school sends you and understand it, and then read what the next school sends you. And then if there's discrepancies or you don't understand anything, that's what we're here for. We're here to try to answer those and make it as clear as possible when you're looking at two different letters and it's kind of hard to see if they're the same.
Could you end up seeing letters from two different schools that look wildly different in terms of aid, even on things like a federal loan? Is that possible, or should you expect them to sort of be similar?
You could see things that are wildly different. I mean, even though with some of the programs like the federal Pell Grant and the federal direct student loan program, those are pretty much federally prescribed as far as caps and limits. Again, you'll see some schools that don't even offer loans up front, or some schools that don't even participate in the loan program. So you may get an award notice from one school that includes loans and the other one doesn't, and you're curious as to why. So maybe there's some more active kind of work that the student needs to do in order to request those loans. So it is challenging. The award letters, the schools, we do our best to make them easy to understand, but they are pretty individualized to the school, even the schools that are using the template.
Thanks. That's good to keep in mind. So, Kathy, was there anything else when it comes to comparing award letters from different schools that helps to kind of compare on, again, an apples to apples comparison?
Yes. Well, I actually have a colleague who has twins who went through this last year, and I think each of them got admitted to 8 or 9 schools. So she was comparing many apples and oranges. And what she did was to first, as Brad mentioned, take out the books and the personal expenses. Keep travel in, because if you're looking at a college across the country versus in your backyard, that is significant. But books and personal expenses are going to be the same everywhere. And then go through each of the components of the cost of attendance. Many times a college will present an average room cost, when in fact your housing expenses can vary quite a bit depending on the kind of dorm you choose or whether you have a single or a double. So make sure you have a good sense of what your child might choose. Look at the board options and look at what the different meal plans are. If your child has never gotten up for breakfast in the last 17 years and you don't think they're going to start, look to see if there are options for board plans. So go through each component and interpret it and translate it into your costs. That's a good way to start, and then subtract the grants and scholarships. You also want to understand if the grants and scholarships are renewable and what it takes to have them renewed.
Those are great points. So to bring this question back to you, Kathy, since we're typically looking at single-year awards, what can a family do to predict what they'll need to borrow over all 4 years from an award letter?
Great, that's a great question. And I think, you know, it's so easy to get wrapped up in that first year, but you got to remember to multiply it by 4. So go through each of the components, and colleges are really pretty good about outlining what the criteria are for renewal. So if you read through those terms, as Brad said, and sometimes it'll be on paper, sometimes they'll send you to a website, but you'll want to understand, especially on the grants and scholarships, whether they're renewable. So merit-based scholarships, usually there's a GPA requirement, maybe participation in an honors program or something like that. When it comes to need-based grants, so this is the money that was awarded based on your income and your assets and your household size and how many people in your household are in college, that's where you want to read the fine print about how renewable those grants are. Some colleges will have some language that says, you know, if your financial situation remains the same, you can expect that your grant should be renewed if it's from them. When it comes to federal and state grants, those can be really, you know, sensitive to changes in income. So if you know your financial situation will be changing in the next 4 years, maybe you have another child going to college, or maybe you have 2 kids in college now and the older one will be graduating, or maybe you're going to have a change in income, that's a place where it's perfectly appropriate to contact the college to see if you can get an idea of how the package might change, if there are going to be any significant changes. I think colleges are very willing to work with you. They recognize that you're making a 4-year commitment, and the system is set up so they give you a 1-year award, but I think they want you to be as well informed as possible.
Great. Brad, was there anything else to add to the idea of just sort of making a 4-year estimate or understanding what you'll pay for 4 years from a financial aid award letter?
I think Kathy, again, had a lot of great comments about that, spot on. The only thing I would add would be 4 years isn't as common as it used to be, and for people to be really realistic about that. You know, the average bachelor's degree takes about 120 credit hours to complete, and for a lot of schools, 12 credit hours is the minimum full time. So a student comes in, and if they take 12 credit hours at a traditional semester school to be full time, well, just do the math. You can't graduate in 4 years, so you're automatically adding more time on. So part of that strategy of how to pay for school is also to look at how long is it realistically going to take you to be out based on the number of credit hours you're taking, the type of school you're going to, and hopefully getting out as fast as you can, especially if you're borrowing, because again, we don't want you to borrow any more than you have to.
Those are great points. So we are running a bit low on time, so this next question will be our last, which is, and I'll start this with you, Brad, what can a family do if the award letter doesn't appear to have enough aid to make that college affordable? What are some quick things they can do?
Sure, the quick thing is you go back to what Kathy said. If you know your income situation is changing and you can't afford it because of something that's happened in your life, then you call the school and you talk to us about it and see if we can help you. If it's a school that's just financially out of reach, and because your income is stable, nothing is really changing, but you have a lot of credit card debt, you got mortgages, you got car loans and all those things, and it's making the college hard to pay for, then frankly, there's not a lot that most of us colleges would be able to do for you under those circumstances. So we're really looking for the situation where everything is fine and then all of a sudden the wheels kind of fall off the bus and you're looking for us to try to give you a hand. And give us a call about those situations. We like to do what we can to help you out.
Wonderful. That's great to know. So I am going to thank you both so much for participating today, Kathy and Brad. I learned a lot, and I hope the people watching did as well, too. If you need more advice or tips, we have a lot on paying for college, scholarships, and financial aid at usnews.com/education. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Thanks again to everyone for watching, and thanks again, Kathy and Brad.